This is a 1995 Glasair III, but it is a little unusual in that it's one of, I believe it was just 3, as far as I know. It's either 3 or 4 Glasair IIIs that doesn't have a Lycoming IO 540. What happened was Stoddard Hamilton built the Glasair as a kit in the 1990s, and Allison Turbine Engines, they were a company sponsored by the government to build small turbines for either vertical takeoff or fixed-wing aircraft in the 50s. And they built the engines for a ton of different helicopters. Most notably, the Bell Jet Ranger uses the Allison turbine engine. And Allison and Glasair got together and said, gee, you know, you've got an airframe that would fit really well with our small turbine. So they designed the engine mount, they designed the entire mating of the turbine engine to the airframe. The idea initially was that they would create something that would become a US military trainer. And so they built, like I said, I think it was 3 or 4 prototypes. This particular one was built in '95. It was built in Phoenix or Mesa at Performance One. So it was, I'd call those guys professionals.
100%.
Built. It was sold to an owner in Mexico, so it had Mexican registration initially when it was new. When that gentleman died, it was at least 6 or 8 years ago. There was a gentleman in Albuquerque who bought the plane, flew it just a few hours, realized that if he had a gear failure or a gear up landing, it would cost him a mint. And he sold it to the man that I bought it from in Texas, Tommy Stoneman. Thank you, Tommy. Nice job selling it to me. You were great to work with. And Tommy flew it a lot. Tommy flew it all over the country. He put about 400 hours on it. So I just acquired it a couple of months ago. As far as the other turbine Glasairs, I know that one crashed in the later 90s. I think it was 96 or 97. The accident report indicates that it was probably, they lifted off slow, and then the amount of torque coming off this thing is crazy, the amount of rudder that you need. And Blake will talk to that because he's the real turbine Glasair III pilot right now, other than Tommy.
Tommy's got the most, for
Tommy's
sure.
got the most time, yeah, for sure.
But we're learning.
We're learning, yeah. But it seems like that plane torque rolled. They took off slow, and the guy just cobbed the power and torque rolled the plane and crashed and unfortunately killed 2 people. So the other turbine Glasair that I know of has a Great Britain registration. So as far as I know, this is the only sample flying in the United States under US registration. So we acquired it in August, and I've done a little bit of work. Tommy had put Garmin G5s in. The S-Tech autopilot wasn't working, the trim broke, so I took the opportunity to switch over to a Garmin autopilot because it really didn't take a lot more with the Garmin G5s in there already. And now I'm just trying to learn to fly the thing from Blake, and Blake can tell you a little bit more about how the plane flies.
So the airplane actually flies really, really well. I think it doesn't even seem like it was kind of a prototype. I think it came out of the box really well. There's obviously some couple hiccups, just like most experimentals have, but I think overall it's a really good airplane. One of the most notable hiccups that we have is, for one, like he was talking about the torque on takeoff, when we're rolling down the runway, we have to put that rudder all the way to the floor and let that airflow get over the rudder before we even have any sort of authority. Once we get that under control and we're taking off down the runway, it actually rotates at a relatively slow speed compared to the clipped wing Glasairs. It rotates at probably around 80, maybe a little less, but the clipped wings are more like 90, in my experience at least. And so once you get up in the air, one of the big things that we're learning is you have to reduce the power when you get the gear up, because there's not a gear tunnel in here. And so it's just the cowling slapped on top of the gear. So when you bring the gear up, there's so much high pressure inside the cowling that the gear doesn't want to come all the way up. So in order to fix that, we have to go gear up, power back, let the gear come all the way up, and then power back in. This isn't the most comfortable thing to do when you're taking off,
no.
But that's what we're trying to figure out, the best technique on how to do that. And we've done a little bit. We're actually just yesterday learned that if we can get the nose wheel up, the rest of the gear will follow with it. Once it's in the air, it's a great flying airplane. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's not that hard to fly. It's very stable. It's pretty pitchy.
Yeah, pitch sensitivity.
It's pretty
yeah.
fit. You know, you sneeze on the stick, all of a sudden you're in the canopy, but that's normal Glasair stuff. So we went out to Texas to pick this thing up. Me and Mr. Mahoney's son. We went out there and met with Mr. Stoneman. Great guy. He accommodated us very well. So we showed up and we were taking. He had this thing in a strip on a 22-foot wide strip in Poly Ranch in Texas. Crazy.
It won't go back there by any of us.
I won't take it there, no way. So a 22-foot wide strip on Poly Ranch, and I didn't really learn how to fly it there. I did sit right seat on the takeoffs and landings there. Very sporty. Anyway, so I went and flew with Mr. Stoneman, got checked out in the left seat. Probably did 5 to 7 flights in it before I was comfortable to ferry it back. So we just went and did some takeoffs and landings, took it up to 17.5, put the oxygen mask on, just try to see how it felt, and it felt really good. So we ended up ferrying it back here. We were coming back 17.5, doing 270 knots over the ground, burning like 20 gallons of fuel an hour, up on oxygen. We came from Houston. We did a fuel stop in, I believe, Lubbock.
Yeah.
And then Lubbock to here, and we made it here in like under 4 hours. So, I mean, for the bang for the buck you get is just impressive. It really is. It's actually a great cross-country machine, and that's what I think he bought it for, was that it's got 80-gallon tanks. So a lot of people are probably going to say, oh, you can only have a 45-minute range in this thing. No, you have like a 3-hour range, maybe even a little bit more, but that's stretching it. Down low, you obviously burn a ton more fuel, but up high, you can get that way down and you can get your true airspeed up. And it's got major ramp appeal. People love this thing.
It makes a lot of noise.
It makes a lot of noise. I mean, almost every time I've taken it somewhere and got out, I mean, there's just people running up to the airplane. What kind of motor's on that? Asking, you know, tons of questions. And it's awesome because it deserves it. They did a really good job. And it doesn't look like someone just slapped a motor, an Allison motor on this thing up front. It's completely professionally done. And you can see that the nose is a little bit longer and the giant exhaust. But other than that, I mean, it's just a normal Glasair, but they built it from the beginning to accommodate this engine. The Allison, exactly. It was never planned to have a Lycoming on it.
Yeah.
So all out of the gate, they did a really good job. My only gripe, and this is all Glasair, not just this one specifically, is the one-piece wing, which has one tank basically. So in this position, sitting right here, if the tank wasn't full of fuel, all the fuel that would be on this side would rush to that side. So you would take off with an inherently left or a right heavy wing. And so when you take off, the airplane just wants to bank hard to the other way until you get up in the air for a little bit and have to slip it and let it kind of get level, and then it's fine. But sitting on the ramp, you have to really be careful of how you position it, or else you're going to get a really heavy wing.
Glasair's solution to that was to put flapper valves. There's a center section to the fuel tank, and the flapper valves encourage fuel collection in the center section, but they're not absolute check valves. So while they'll encourage the fuel to come to the center section, they allow it to leave the center section as well, and that's why you can transfer fuel all the way across.
You can tell that it has no compression.
Yeah. These inlets are for the oil cooler. There's one on each side, so there's big 4-inch scat tube coming up to the oil cooler up here that goes over. The way the engine works, this is the compressor. That's the first stage of the compressor that you can see right there sitting out in the wind. And it's amazingly small. I mean, if you look at, compared to my hand, for 450 horsepower, it's just amazing. And the way the engine works is you have 5 axial compressor stages coming back. Then it goes to a centrifugal compressor. Then that compressed air gets routed to the back of the engine, to the combustion chamber. Fuel is added, there's already heat there, so it immediately ignites. Expansion, and it comes through a couple of turbine stages, and that's what spins the compressor. And then after that, completely detached. This, you can see if I turn this, it doesn't turn the compressor blades. So the power turbine isn't attached to the rest of the engine. That power turbine is what spins the gearbox, and then the gearbox reduces the RPM for all the accessories and the propeller. And the propeller turns at, because it's controlled by the governor, it adjusts the pitch, it maintains 2,000 RPM. So once we get above about 35 or 40% torque, we're at 2,000 RPM, and it never changes, no matter how much power you add. And then after the turbine blades, the exhaust just comes back out the middle of the engine. the 2 exhaust stacks. Surprisingly for a turbine, it's just like, and it's there right away.
And it's there. When you dirty this thing up to come into land and throw the gear down, it drops the speed off really, really quickly. So if you're not in front of the power curve, by getting the power back into where you need it, you'll find yourself need that response to not get slow. Because I'm sure a lot of you guys know that low and slow on these things is just not, you can't let it happen.
You can't do it.
You can't do it. So getting ahead of the airplane, throwing the gear down, and getting the power back in is very, very important.
So welcome to the inside. Stick control. You have one power lever. Like I said, the governor automatically controls the prop RPM to 2000 RPM once the torque gets high enough. So really, this is just one lever control. There's a gate switch here, and this brings it back behind the gate, which goes to flat pitch, and eventually, if you keep coming back here it says beta, that's reverse thrust. So that's a really cool thing if you're trying to land in a shorter runway. I mean, yeah, you're coming over the fence at 90 to 100 knots, but once you touch down, you can just pull this back into beta, and you get a lot more slowing.
And it's also very it's very easy on the brakes too. You're not smashing the brakes. So even if you're like down here at Prescott, taxiing down and 2 and left, it's a gradual downhill. Yeah. So we'll just bring it over the gate and kind of just keep it there, and we don't really ever have to touch the brakes. And it sounds, more than it helps the brakes, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, you'll hear us as we're taxiing down. You hear the whah as it goes to the flat pitch. The condition lever is just like, think of it as a 2-position mixture control. So this is fuel cutoff right now. And when we're starting it, the start sequence is turn on the master, check to make sure we have at least 24 volts. And then if we do, then you hold the starter and igniter up. If you just hold this down, it just spins the engine, but it won't turn on the igniters. So you hold this up, and then you wait to see at least 15% of N1 or turbine RPM. Once you get to 15%, then you just flip the lever forward, and that introduces fuel. You've already got the igniters going, and you've got enough airflow at 15%, theoretically, that you won't get too hot as the fire starts. You watch the TOT, the turbine outlet temperature, rise, and ideally you want to see it not go over 800 Celsius. If it can go all the way up to 927 for up to a second, but ideally it won't go that high. And
we haven't really ever seen it
we
go
haven't
that.
seen it do that.
With a strong battery, and if you motor the engine correctly, if it's been hot, it most of the time doesn't even touch the yellow.
Yeah, even in Phoenix yesterday, when we started it after it had been running, it went up into the yellow just a little bit, but it didn't go over the 800.
No big deal.
So then you keep holding the switch up, and you watch for 50%. There's a mark here, or just under 60%. Once the engine gets up to that speed, then it's self-sustaining. And now you don't need the starter motor to help it anymore. So you can release the switch. The engine keeps spooling up just a little bit higher than that, and that's idles, around 60% N1 RPM. And then you turn on the generator. That's your starter motor. So your starter motor turns into your generator once you've started the aircraft. And then the rest is pretty standard aircraft stuff. Masters, the Avionics master on, and we have pretty standard avionics. We've got 2G5s. Like Blake and I alluded to, we'd like to improve or modernize the avionics a little bit. We've got
That's not even a 430.
That's a 400. Yeah.
I didn't know they had 400.
Yeah, so
I kind of did too.
Yeah, so no comm, no VOR ILS head there. It's just GPS. And then you've got the 2 KX1 155s for the older audience. Those used to be the latest and greatest.
Oh, I was flying whenever that was the latest and greatest.
Yeah. I remember pining for one of those for one of my airplanes. We really want to modernize this a little bit. The interior has always been really nice. Yeah. They did a great job. I mean, more than just what you see cosmetically underneath. When we took this all apart, when I fixed the trim motor, this whole center console, they did a really nice job with it. It's like a two-tiered system. So there's a location for all of the electronic wires and separately for the rudder cables and everything. It's just well engineered the way they designed the center console of the airplane. And, you know, the interior's gotten a little wear and tear. It's, you know, from the mid 90s, but it was definitely very, very nice when they did it, and it's still very serviceable.
When I was flying this airplane back from Texas, there was a couple things that I made notes of what I thought was something that we could improve. One of them being that gear handle was just, it looked exactly like the master switch. It looked no different. It was almost the same switch, maybe a little bit bigger, but with the master switch and the gear switch being right next to each other, I didn't like it. And for one, when you go up to, you know, grab the gear, you're like, wait, am I grabbing, which one am I grabbing? I don't, you know, so it just seemed like a poor design. So we put the 310 handle on it. So now it, you know, very easy to differentiate.
Identify as gear, yeah.
Another thing that I didn't like is we didn't have the trim pitch indicator, which is sitting right next to the audio panel. So we had no idea where the pitch trim was for takeoff. So you're kind of just like guessing and hoping it was in the right spot.
And
so
oh my gosh, that took 50% of the time that I worked on putting in the autopilot was just trying to get the trim sensor installed. That was a real engineering headache.
But it works great.
Yeah.
Now at least we know where our trim position is for takeoff. The best upgrade that Mr. Mahoney did was the GFC 500. The autopilot that in it was before, I mean, it just didn't work. So I hand flew it back from Texas, which is fine. It was awesome. But now this thing, you just autopilot on, heading, altitude, whatever, and it just cruises, no problem.
That thing is smooth.